Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. So now the presenter Sari and Amy is there. So we are going to talk about the special educations, whoever that's diagnosed with the ASD. So that's what we want to learn from the teacher's perspective, how the educations, the special education happening in the classroom. So you want to share our information to get the knowledge from the classroom perspective, how the special education is happening currently, and what we can get the knowledge from teachers so that we can give a good guidance for the kids to learn from that special education. So I like to invite Shari and Amy. Thank you for joining and accept our request to presenting this session. So now your time, so you can start sharing your screen and present. Thank you.
Okay, hi Ram, thank you for for setting this up and giving us the opportunity to talk to everybody today about special education, and we'll do our best today to answer some questions that you have. And Ram has, thank you Ram for sending us some questions, but we want to leave some time for people really to type questions in the chat. We're happy to take any and all questions, and just go through our slides here. So let me see if I can get this. So yeah, our goal for the session. First, can everybody see my presentation?
No, I don't see it, Sherry.
No, not yet. Yeah.
Okay. I've got two different screens kind of up here. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Now you're able to see the Zoom meeting.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So our goal for today for the session is to learn something from each other. And so collaboration has been a passion of mine for many, many years since I started teaching. One of the first things I learned was working together is the way we provide the very best support and services for children and for students with disabilities. And so it's through that team and that collaboration that we actually do the best at providing services for kids. So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Sherry Peterson, and I started teaching in 2003. Prior to that, I worked for Hennepin County and did their worked in their juvenile corrections department here in Minnesota, and decided to make a career change, became a special education teacher. And I've been teaching for intermediate school district 17 since 2003. Started out as a paraprofessional, went back to school, got my master's degree, and I've been just learning everything I can about special education and primarily autism for the last 17 years. So it's been a great experience. I have two adult children. My son Jacob is 26 and my daughter Nicole is 24. And I'd love to spend time when I'm not teaching outside, anything outside, do lots of golfing and boating and gardening, and love to just be outside and with my family and friends. So, and I have the honor and privilege of working with Amy Wrench. Amy, you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I'm Amy Wrench. I've been working as a para for about 8 years. I worked in the elementary, middle, and high school schools in Lakefield and Farmington. I have a degree in sociology with an emphasis in criminal justice. So I love working as a para. It's my favorite job ever. I love seeing the kids grow throughout the years. I love getting them into the mainstream class and just connecting with their peers and going on their field trips and just really working one-on-one with the kids. So.
And it's so great. I talk about collaboration a lot because the work that Amy and I do together is really so important to kids being successful and students being successful in our program and in the schools. So these were some of the questions that were pre-submitted. So I have a few slides prepared, and then, like I said, this is kind of just a time for people to ask questions. We'll take about an hour, I think we have set aside. So, but we're going to talk a little bit about questions came out about what is special education, questions about eligibility, how does an IEP work? So we're going to talk about, I've got some slides that talk about the IEP. And then the evaluation. People had questions about the evaluation, and these are all just at the core of special education, these questions. So it's good to have, it's going to be a broad overview, but if you have more specific questions, please feel free to ask them. Special education is such a huge area. There's so many different things to talk about, but we'll try to kind of keep it general at first, and then we can come back and get into other questions as we go. We'll talk a little bit about assessments too. Some people were asking about assessments. So the first kind of general information is just to know a little bit about the Individuals with Disabilities Act. It mandates that every public school in the US, they have to identify and evaluate students suspected of having a disability. And so you'll hear lots of laws that came out of this idea, the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And you'll hear people talk about FAPE, F-A-P-E, FAPE, and that's related to this Individuals with Disabilities Act. And it's every child suspected of having a disability is provided a free and appropriate public education. So FAPE. You'll hear people talk about FAPE. Students get services until they graduate or after they turn 21. And really what special education is, I got a lot of this information actually just from the Minnesota Department of Education. Was such a valuable, at the end of the presentation, there's a list of resources and references. And so that's where I pulled a lot of this information from. So you'll have a link to that at the end of the presentation. And the other website that was really helpful as I was trying to prepare some answers was PACER, an organization called PACER, and that's at the end of the presentation too. So that's where I've gotten my information that I'm sharing with you today. Those were the two primary places, and then everything else right here. So special education is really designed, specialized designed instruction to meet the individual needs of students with disabilities. And it's at no cost to the parents. Special education includes individualized instruction in a classroom, at home, in hospitals, medical institutions, or in other environments. And so what's really awesome about special education is it's individualized. There's no two children with a disability that have the same needs. They may have similar needs, but they don't have the same needs. And so when we as teachers develop, design, programming, things like that, we always have it specifically individualized for that student, because what works for some students doesn't work for others. And so remember that it's very, very specifically individualized for students, and all the students are different. Let's talk a little bit about how special education works. So It's a process, and it starts with an initial referral for special education. The evaluation takes place, and they determine that evaluation will determine eligibility for special education services. And we're going to, my slides kind of give a little more information on each of these components. So once they've determined eligible for special education, then it'll be a team will work together to develop your child's individualized education plan. They call it the IEP. There's a lot of acronyms that are used, things like that throughout, but you'll get familiar. They talk about the IEP, what's the IEP? And that's your child's individualized education plan. And then after that's developed, we implement the services in that plan. So the important thing is that initial referral to the evaluation, determine eligibility, then comes the IEP, and then come the services. So it takes that kind of a flow. I'm concerned about my child. What should I do? I have a friend that's a public health nurse, and I'm not real familiar with, I am in the elementary spot, Amy and I are. So, but she, information she said is just contact your child's pediatrician or school district. There's a number at the end of the slide for the Lakefield School District, but the special education number. But you're just going to call the special education department for your school district and tell them, I'm concerned about my child. What should I do? And then they're going to follow kind of a similar process. There's going to be an assessment or an evaluation depending on the age of your child. There's going to be some results that come out of that evaluation. It's going to talk about eligibility, you know, what's their eligibility, and then what kind of supports or services will be determined from that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the initial evaluation process. So the school district will conduct an evaluation, even if your child's, there's a program in the birth to 2, birth to 3, up to 5, even before your child's in school, they will conduct an initial evaluation, and the parent or guardian has to provide consent for that, and then they move forward with the evaluation. And the team meets after that evaluation. They discuss the results and determine eligibility based on, there's very specific criteria that they have to meet to determine eligibility. And based on that criteria, if they meet the eligibility for a disability like autism, there's very specific needs that are outlined in that evaluation. So the evaluation is critical, a good evaluation, because it outlines the needs, and the needs form the basis of the IEP. Minnesota has 13 disability categories, and the team of professionals, the parents, and the team that does the evaluation, they'll determine the what the criteria is, and well, the criteria is what it is, and then the team determines if they met criteria. So these are, it's just a brief overview of the different categories that's students can have their disabilities. And I made a slide just so people could see, just for future reference. If you think your child has autism, this is the criteria that we look at. And so I'm not going to go through each point, but you can see. So in the evaluation, we're going to look at this criteria. This is the specific criteria. If you're wondering, does my child have autism? here's where you're going to look. If you have one or more indicators in sub items 1 and 2, and the evaluation will show that'll be evaluated. That's going to lead a team to looking at autism. And so all the different disabilities have their criteria. And this leads to the diagnosis of autism and qualifies a child for autism services. And here's the rest of it.
Yeah, sorry for the interrupt. So the question
Yep.
is here that is there anywhere published that people can view this information, like the specific slide, like is there any website which we can go and check the criteria what we are looking for, like the way how they diagnosed, I mean, the information in the school side? So
yeah, so the Minnesota Department of Education website, I have a slide at the end, and it lists the criteria that a child would have to meet to get services. So yeah, this criteria is listed on the Minnesota Department of Education. And if someone's looking for specific criteria, let me know. You can email me. I didn't put my email on at the end, but I can do that and help somebody find criteria if you can't find. The website's got so much information that sometimes it is a little difficult to find what you're looking for.
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you.
So I wanted to say just a few things about, so this goes back to that idea, the Disabilities Act, the Iep team. And this team is so important because this is the people that are working together. I go back to the collaboration piece, working together to help support the child and determine goals and objectives, talking about needs and services. And so I think there was a question about who's on the Iep team. And it's important to know that, so the parents are I think the most important people on the team, because you know your child the best. And so information that the team can get from you is critical. And the communication between parents and the team, and then everybody else on the team, is just critical. I encourage parents always to ask questions. Asking questions is one of the best ways. And that's why I love that we're doing some questions and answers. Ask questions, and teachers are happy. I'm happy to share what I know, and there's no question that should be unanswered. You should just not feel embarrassed or shy about asking those kind of questions. It's important so that your child can get the help they need. I encourage parents to be confident. Parents don't have to feel guilty or embarrassed about asking questions. And it's really in your child's best interest. And so advocating for your child. So never feel uncomfortable or bad about asking for things for your child. That's what we want parents to do. And then working together. I just want to say how important working together is. So parents, you are critically important on the team. And then on the team will also be a regular education teacher and a special education teacher, a representative from the local agency, maybe a school district representative, and somebody that can help make decisions in their role. So a district administrator, an individual who can interpret test results. That's our school psychologist typically. And then under it, other individuals having knowledge or expertise. That could be a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, teacher of the blind, visually impaired, a developmental adaptive physical education teacher. Those are some of the other people you'll see on the team. It could be a nurse, and there's a variety of people. Anybody with the expertise that'll help meet your child's needs will be on that team. And then when the kids get older, the child will be encouraged to attend those meetings too and advocate for themselves. So that's a little bit about the IEP team. And so once you determine, you've had the evaluation, and there's been a criteria met, and there's been a disability identified, the next step is to develop the IEP. And so that IEP team meets, and we've been doing virtual meetings due to COVID. But I mean, these meetings used to be in person, where you're actually sitting down at a table, all the adults, and looking at the evaluation, and the evaluation guides that IEP team meeting. We look at the evaluation, and we're saying from that evaluation, there's needs, and then the team meets and makes goals and objectives related to those needs. So the evaluation is that important document that we always go back to, and we develop the IEP, goals, objectives, and whatever. If a child has communication deficit, they have communication needs, then there's a goal around communication. And so a lot of the goals in an IEP are around those skill deficits. Good communication is important. The IEP is sent to the parents, and then you have an opportunity to ask questions, get clarification, review that document. And then once parent signature is received, or there's a waiting period or 14 days, you'll get something called as prior written notice. And that will be, it'll tell you how long you have to sign, or if you don't sign, then services will begin for your child. So that's an important document. Okay, I'm seeing a couple questions pop up. Okay, let me. Can you still see my screen okay?
Yes, but you're seeing that's Zoom sharing screen, not the slide.
Okay. Okay, there on my screen, yeah, I could see. Can you see the slide again?
Yep.
Okay. And it pushed me back. Okay, so the IEP is sent to the parents for review. There's a couple questions about assessments. And so I'm going to go back again to the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And then there's something called the ESEA and the ESSA. All Minnesota students, including students with disabilities, have to be assessed annually in reading, math, and science in applicable grades, and that's grades 3 to 12. And there's a process for determining the appropriate assessment for your child. And so sometimes students with disabilities will take the MCA, the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment, and they can take that with or without accommodations. All students in the state of Minnesota take the MCA. And the alternative assessment, the Minnesota Test of Academic Skills, is an alternative assessment for students who meet eligibility criteria. And sometimes students with disabilities we look at that alternative assessment. So there's a list of criteria that the IEP team looks at, and at an IEP team meeting, you will talk about assessments and what's the most appropriate assessment. However, there is a special form that parents can sign if they do not want their child for some reason, whatever it is, it's okay. If you do not want your child to take that assessment. So they are able to, parents are able to request that their child not take that assessment. But otherwise, those are given in the general and special education setting, typically in the spring. I wanted to talk just a little bit about adaptations and modifications. So there's a spot in the IEP team meeting that you talk about that too. And these are important parts of the IEP to know. So an accommodation, people talk about that, or an adaptation. It changes how a student learns the material, but it doesn't change the material that a child is learning. So maybe we're going to have a student record a lesson. Maybe instead of taking notes, they're going to get notes from someone else. But the content of what they're learning is the same as all the other students in the general education. A modification, when they talk about modifications, it changes what a student is taught or expected to learn. And so it changes the content. So if a student with a disability at grade level, that work is too challenging, too difficult, they need more time to learn those things, then we're going to make a modification to that, and it changes what the student is taught or expected to learn. And so there's a section in the IEP, and it lists all the adaptations and modifications. I'm going to let Amy talk for a little bit. And so, yeah, that kind of teacher role is really to know the evaluation, eligibility, and things like that. So I'm going to let Amy talk about in the classroom. We'll spend a few minutes talking about the role and responsibilities of the teacher and paraprofessionals, what we're doing all day.
So I am with the kids all day. I'm usually working with 1 or 2 students at a time, which I love. So you really get the one-on-one time with the kids. Most of our kids love a daily schedule. They love to look at their schedule. We do usually use a lot of picture symbols so they know what is next after they do their work. So what we would use would be a Velcro strip, and we have little icons of the pictures of what the kids would be doing at that time. A lot of times we use, after they do their work, which would be for most kids a non-preferred task, we would do a preferred task, which would be, you know, an iPad or toys or books or whatever they prefer to do. So we kind of go from using, from doing a non-preferred item to a preferred item. Modified work tasks, I know Sherry kind of talked about a little bit. Some examples that we use is if there's a math assignment, maybe there's 8 questions. So maybe your child would do 4 questions instead of the 8. So we just want to modify it a little bit. It's the same type of work. We're just making it less problems. Another thing is you want to build relationships with your peers. My big push for our students is to really get them involved in their mainstream class, find some friends in there. We do a little bit of buddy pairing, so the kids will play a card game or a board game with someone from their general education class. Another thing I really suggest is have really great communication with your general education teachers. Let them know what your students can do and how they can get involved in the general ed class, whether it's going to art class or gym class or music class. You really want to, try and get them in there as much as they can to be with their same age peers. We use a written or visual schedule every day, which I kind of talked about. Some of the kids really like the pictures. Other kids, we just write down on the board and they check off once they're finished with that task. Again, the facilitating relationships and interactions with peers. Something we really work on with the kids. A lot of our kids don't have a lot of eye contact with kids. So something we work on almost every day is saying hello. We watch a little video. The steps are basically turn your body, look at their eyes and say hello. So we really, really work on that with our kids quite a bit. Again, supporting the kids throughout the day in their general and special education classrooms. We want to let our kids know what to expect when they go in the general education classroom. So we really kind of go over before they go in the general ed class what they should expect to be doing in there, just so they know there's no surprises. They know what they'll be doing in there. For some kids, we use a positive behavior support strategy and token system, and that can be a sticker chart or a reward system depending on the student's age or their disability. Maybe they finish their work, they get 3 stickers, so they get extra iPad time or maybe an extra recess time. So we do use that with some of the kids. And throughout the day, we really just work on your kids' goals and objectives throughout the day. We continue to work on these daily so they can be successful in moving on to the next level. Another thing I don't think was on the board here, but we give our kids a lot of choices. Let's say they wanted, when they're doing their work, we give them a choice. Do you want to use a pencil or a pen? Just so you're kind of empowering them to make the decision on what they choose. And also if they need a motor break, do they want to go on the bike or do they want to go for a walk? So you're letting them really choose. It's their choice. You're not telling them what to do. So you're empowering them to make the decision. So in each kid is really completely different that we're working with, and we just really try and tailor their day towards their needs and their schedules.
Amy, that's great. I want to add one thing to that. I'm thinking, and every student is so different. We work in a classroom that students are in most of the day. They start their day in our special education room, and then they're going out into their general education classroom throughout the day at varying periods of time. And then they come back into their special education classroom. So it's a combination of general and special ed. Some kids are just in our special education room all day. They're just not quite ready to go into the general education classroom. And we still try to find opportunities for them to be with their peers. However, even if they're not quite ready to be in that specific classroom, if there's special events or activities or things they can be involved in, that's that collaboration again with the general ed teacher. So we're trying to, there's all different models, and that's really individualized between a program. Sometimes kiddos are in the general ed all day with para support, maybe with intermittent support. There's all different kinds of models, and that Iep team should be talking about that. Amy, do you want to add anything else? This is a good one. We could spend all day on this.
Yeah, I mean, just a goal of mine with all the kids that I've worked throughout the years is really to get them to go on the field trips with their peers. One of my favorite stories is I had a boy that I worked with for almost 4 years, And, you know, he had never been able to go on a field trip when I started working with him. And when he was in 5th grade, I took him on a ski trip, and it was honestly the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And he had an adapted ski lesson, and you'd think I was his mom by the way I was taking videos and pictures of him. So it's really great to see the growth, especially when you work with someone for years, and it's really great to see them with their peers.
Yes, I love that. Programming for students. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. So some of the components that are important with ASD are the inclusion opportunities, which I've talked about, the individualized instruction, the positive behavior support strategies, which would be the sticker charts or any of that kind of what was my other one?
Maybe that token board.
The token board, yes, the token board. Structured environment and tasks, routine and predictability. Like I said, you really want to let your kids know if there's going to be something different about the day. You want to let them know ahead of time if there's going to be a fire drill or a lockdown. Just letting them know before it happens is very, very important. Regular sensory support. We use a lot of sensory diets, we call them, with some of our kids, and that can be anywhere from squeezing their hands to jumping on trampolines to there's many different sensory supports. The clear and consistent rules and expectations. If I take a student out for a bike ride or outside for recess, some kids really need to know the rules and expectations before we go out of the room. So we write them down, we go over them mostly daily until they really are used to the rules. The social stories to support desired behavior. Like I said, the saying hello, just really social stories for any type of behavior the kids may be having a hard time with. We would make up a social story, their visual schedule, supports and choices. And then we do watch a fair amount of video modeling with role modeling with adults or kids.
And all those are just kind of off the top of my head. If I had to make a list of things that are important for the kids in our programming, I threw together this list. There's more, I know that, but at the core, when I think about our daily programming, what's really important for students is these kind of things. And so when you're meeting with that Iep team, are they using a routine, predictable, consistent daily routine and schedule, and good special education programs definitely are including that, and using these kind of components. So I think they're important.
Oh, one more thing,
and that's my perspective.
I would, agree with Sherry. And our kids love a schedule. They're kind of almost lost without it. They really get to know their schedule. In fact, if something doesn't happen, they'll tell us, and they really, really rely on their schedule.
And it goes right to the regulation, wouldn't you say, Amy, too?
Mm-hmm.
When students have a good schedule, they're more regulated.
They know what's coming next. They know some of them that, they look at the clock, they say it's time for work. So they really, really rely on the schedule, and they like it.
Okay. So that's kind of the end of the questions. I know it was overview. It's from my perspective. But again, I drew information from the Minnesota Department of Education. That website's here. I went online. Pacer has a great website with tons of information, and the The phone number is listed there, that 952 number, that's the local number, but I found some other ones they listed too. I listed the Lakefield Special Education Department. The link to the Minnesota, I think it was the Minnesota Department of Education, had the IEP, Dakota County Social Services, parents looking for, and my friend that's a public health nurse, she said, please give parents this phone number. If you need more support at home, or you know, the Dakota County services, or whatever county you're in, find your local county support services. The one listed here is the Dakota County one. And then I just put parents' rights. Always know that you have lots of rights for your child, and I linked it here to the parent rights. It's really long. It's a packet. Parents get them before at least once a year, but at varying times, usually during the IEP. That's how our district does it. Some districts may do it different, but that's an important document. You have rights, and you want the best for your child, and so you're advocating for them. So I did link that here as well. That is, like I said, a brief overview, and we'll take questions and see if we can give you more information. And if I don't have the answer to a question, I'll find out. And I'll type my email address in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a little bit so I can see.
Thank you, Amy and Shruti. Thanks for that. So can you give me something about the social stories to help the kids? Can you give me some examples or something, so that the people who is watching, they'll at least get to know some information?
Yeah. So anytime I see a student having difficulty with anything, it could be a task, it could be a behavior, a great way to teach a child the appropriate way to do something is to have a social story. And so I have a million of them. I actually make social stories for almost everything. But one of the first ones, so a common challenge is getting kids to do academic work. And it's not a student's favorite thing to do by any means. And so how do we get a child to do academic work when they don't want to do it? And so we have a designated time that they're going to do on their schedule. They're going to do their work. And so sometimes the very first thing I start with is a social story. And so it's not demanding. They're just sitting there listening. We're just going to read that story. And so I'll put in a story that says, sometimes I go to school and learning is fun, and I'll attach a picture to that. Sometimes at school, I have to do things I don't want to do. This makes me feel frustrated. But I know my teacher is trying to help me learn new things. So when I have to do my schoolwork, I'll try to stay calm or ask for a break so that I can learn new things. This will make my teachers and my parents so proud, and I'll feel proud of myself too. The end. It's just a little short story. It's got visual cues with it so they can follow the pictures. And it's all about, if you don't want to do your work, we might put in there, my teacher's here to help me with my work. It's okay to feel frustrated. I can take a break. I can ask for help. And some of those positive, we talk about positive behavior support strategies. Those are the positive behavior support strategies that we want to use. So social stories are great for for any behavior, any task. Some students, their voice volume is just so loud and they just don't have that body or self-control or voice control. So we're going to have some kind of a story. Sometimes learning is fun, and they start out kind of the same, and there's a structure to it. And Carol Gray really is the social story master. She's made so many over the years, and there's a certain structure that she has, what kind of statements you put in there. And so I would say Carol Gray to highlight, and you could, search Carol Gray social stories. Fantastic. She's done a lot of great work.
I think the other thing I would add about the social stories is there's also pictures. There's little pictures next to each sentence that you write, like working makes me frustrated. So it'll show a little square picture of, say, a boy or girl with like a frustrated face. So the kids are, they're understanding it really well. And I feel like at the end of most of our social stories, it always says, I will feel proud of myself and my teachers will feel proud. So it's really a positive story, I guess you would say. And it's not really, it's just a 1-page social story that we read the kids. But I mean, it's tailoring the behavior, but it's really puts a positive spin on it, I guess I would say, Sherry.
Yeah, because we want students to feel confident and empowered, and it's okay to get frustrated. It's okay not to want to do your work. We're going to help you. And if you get too frustrated, you can take a break, choose a different activity, and come back. And it's important not to make work so challenging for students that they can't complete the work. If they become too frustrated, that's a signal to me that might be too hard. So I'm going to do lots of modeling. You know what? Your job is just to watch. Here's how you do an assignment. Here's how you do this specific assignment. Students have a lot of anxiety. They don't know how to write their name. And so you're going, write your name. It's like, you know what? Here, let me show you. Here's how I write my name. And it's amazing with modeling that you can really, and make it easy enough, make them successful. If a student's not successful, that's my fault. I haven't done the right, set it up for success. I call it setting it up for success. All kids should end in being able to be successful. And maybe their success is just sitting and watching. Maybe we're sorting coins and they're just going to put in 2 coins, but I'm going to do all the rest. And I'm going to give them the last 2 and say, oh, where do they go? You can do it. Build their confidence.
I keep thinking of things too as we're talking. I think another thing we always do is positive praise. We are constantly telling the kids, I'm proud of you, you're doing so well. Even if it's just, a little bit of the activity, it's, I'm proud of you, you should be so proud of yourself. So we try and use a ton of positive praise, which I feel like we do a really good job of. And then the kids are really proud of themselves.
Cool, thank you. Thank you. So can we go through the questions which is there in the chat window first, and then we'll go through the main questions if we not answered anything or covered. Yeah.
So yeah. I'm seeing a question here. What's the reason for autism, or the root cause? What kind of causes autism? This is a question that has, really been asked and researched a lot over the years. And, from my perspective, I'm just going to say, we just haven't really figured that one out yet. There's a lot of theories and people think they know, but I'm not sure they've really come, at least to the best of my knowledge, they really haven't come up with an agreement of what causes autism. What we have figured out over the years, and I said, I've been a teacher since 2003, is we're doing a way better job of identifying students with autism and coming up with strategies, support, and services for these kids. And before they were maybe not as, we just didn't know enough about the disability itself and about kids with disabilities and how to help kids with disabilities. And so one of the biggest areas of growth in special education is really there. We never know what causes a disability. Okay, and then is the Lakefield School District the best for special education? I'm not sure it's the best for special education. I think it's great. So many districts do such a fantastic job in the area of special education that I'd be hard pressed to say Lakefield's the best. I worked in the Farmington School District as well. Our program was located in Farmington, and I just work with, I'm blessed, I'm honored and blessed that I've worked with so many amazing teams of people that are in special education. And it's my hope that the best special education is whatever district you're in. Really, I'm hoping that's the best for our kids, because they deserve our very best. So I hope that answers that question a little bit. Ranking associated with school districts. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. That research might be out there. I'm not 100% sure where their rankings and things like that in special education. Previous, go ahead, Ram.
Yeah, I just want to add that the questions which the root cause, about the root cause of autism. So we did the past in the session we conducted through MNTS. So they talked briefly about each part for autism, specifically for autism. They do an hour or 30 minutes, I think, that session. I request to them who asked their questions, maybe they'll go and visit, to that session to understand more details, to cover those the autism things.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry for the interrupt.
Nope. And yeah, if there's more information, I mean, I just know what I know, and those are some of my limitations. So if there's more information, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to put in the chat here. So I'll put my email address, and then Amy, if you want to put yours in there too. If you have any questions that come up later on, you can feel free to reach out to me. And Sherilyn Peterson at gmail.com. And then anybody else have a question? We're getting to the end of our time, and want to make sure that we've answered questions. And it's an overview. This is a brief kind of big picture. There's a lot more specific information on really every component of special education. So the resources in the slides, PACER, really is such a great spot to get information, and the Minnesota Department of Education.
And I just wanted to see, I just saw some of the comments about someone saying, thank you very much for being the hope for parents like us. And I just want to say to you all that there is hope, and I've seen it, and kids really can progress, and there's so many things you can do with them, and I've seen it, and it's amazing, and it's like super near and dear to my heart. I love this job, and I mean, these kids, can work someday in a job, and and they can, you know, work in the community and be out in the community. So there is a lot of hope. And please send us any other questions. So
Sure.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the information. Sherry, can you share your screen that only the question and answers? Is there anything we missed in the list? Just want to double check.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Or do you want me to share? I can share too.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully I've answered most of these questions in a real broad sense.
Okay.
What happens, we talked a little bit about what happens during that IEP meeting. What type of information is included. It's a template, a document, and then we're just going through each of those sections. The sections are outlined, what goes in it. I can't tell you enough. It's really about whatever the team decides at that meeting. The eligibility part, that's big.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we cover most of the questions from the list, but we have a couple of thank you messages. Thank you everyone who joined. And I think we covered most of the questions. Yeah, is that questions answered as Lakefield district is the best special education? Are there any ranking associated with the school district? So do you have any answer or?
So yeah, I touched on that I think a little bit, and you know, I'm hoping every school district offers the very best services for our kids. And I don't know that Lakeville's any better, but my experience in Lakeville, I've only worked in 2 different districts, and my experience in Lakeville has been very positive, and my experience in Farmington is the other district I've worked in. And I think from the teachers that I've interacted with and met, there's great districts across the state, great special education teachers and paraprofessionals and families working together to help these kids with disabilities. And it's one of the things I'm hoping every school district is amazing. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in mute. So the last question they asked about does floor therapy helps more for autism? Do you have any things?
Yeah, that question reminds me of a training I attended kind of early on in my teaching career. And they did talk about floor therapy. And really, I think what came out of some of the research that said the interaction between, it can be a parent and a child or a therapist and a child. It's that interaction. They gave the example, you can grab any object, and floor time is all about the reciprocal engagement. I just grabbed a pen and I could go, oh, it's a pen. Let's put the cover on. Your turn. And it's about, you can grab a bracelet. She gave the example of sock, and that sock becomes the toy, the tool, whatever to interact with. Maybe you're going to do a train, and then they're going to drive the train, and pretty soon you're driving the train together, and this is that floor play. And so it's all about that interaction together. And does it help kids? I think so. Yeah, we're doing that back and forth play. They called it sharing, kind of sharing a moment, and you're sharing that moment together. That's what I think came out of that, the floor play idea. Anytime we're interacting with our children in any way, and just creating that that moment, and we're having fun. This is so great, and we're doing it together. It builds that relationship.
Thank you. Thanks for the information. Is any questions so far? I think covered everything so far. Yep. I don't know. We passed the time, 6 minutes. Thank you both of you to share this information. It's very full information. I think hopefully we have people who joined, but that we are going to share this session to the publish the session to the community. So maybe they will contact you through the email or something which you mentioned. I will put that information in the email too. So thanks again. The wonderful sessions. I can go back and reread that again in some time later to get more information, because sometime if I thinking something and you guys are fast, so I need to go back and watch that recorded session again, things like that. So thanks a lot. Thanks for your timing in the weekend's time. Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
Yeah, thanks, Ram.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody that that jumped on here. We appreciate
Thank you, Sherry and Amy.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, Anusha.